Right. So you guys are ready to dive deep into the four agreements? I think we all are. You're already pretty familiar with the book, so we're going way beyond just surface level here. We've got tons of great excerpts ready to go, and I've got an expert here with me to really help us extract all those hidden gems and, connect the dots in a way that you might not have thought of before. Are you ready to unlock some serious personal freedom?
Absolutely. The four agreements, it seems so simple on the surface, but when you really start digging deep, the implications are really profound. We're going to unpack how these principles can create like a huge ripple effect. They can really transform not just how you think, but also how you experience the world.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I kind of want to revisit that intro. It's really captivating with the whole smoky mirror thing. It's not just some random cool visual, right?
Right.
Ruiz is using that to explain how we see reality. It's kind of like messed up. He talks about humans being made of light and stars, and then he says the world is like smoke obscuring our true nature. That's pretty heavy stuff. What is the deeper meaning of that for us?
Yeah.
We're stuck in this dream, as he calls it.
Yeah. He's basically saying we need to recognize all these illusions that we're constantly bombarded with every day. The tonal, the noggle, the physical world versus like the underlying energy. It's like we get so focused on like the surface reflections in the mirror that we miss the shared essence connecting us all. It's like we're all essentially living in this dream that's been woven from societal expectations and all these limiting beliefs.
Okay, so then that takes us to like domestication, which is where I think things get really personal. Because, it's like we've all been conditioned to fit into this dream of the planet, but often that comes with a pretty big price to pay. And, I think about those times where like I felt pressure to conform, like to please my family or friends or even just like society in general. And it really makes you think like, how did that end up shaping my beliefs? And like, what does it actually mean to break free from that?
Well, I think it's about questioning like literally everything. Domestication is almost like being handed a script like right when you're born. Like it's how to behave and what to believe and even how to feel. And so it creates these inner voices, the judge and the victim, and they keep us playing small. But Ruiz argues we actually have the power to rewrite that script. And the four agreements are like the tools that help us do that.
So that takes us to the first agreement, which is be impeccable with your word. Now, I get that words have power, but to be impeccable with them like all the time, and that seems almost impossible. Like, is it really about never saying anything negative ever?
I don't think it's about becoming some kind of silent saint, but it's more about understanding that words carry energy. It's a kind of magic that really shapes the reality around us. And, Ruiz uses the example of Hitler to show us how destructive words can really be, but this also applies to like gossip and casual negativity and even just like that little voice inside our heads that's constantly putting us down.
I see what you mean. So it's not just about avoiding like harsh words. It's about being mindful of the intention behind everything we say.
Yeah.
Like even just a harmless joke could actually be perpetuating some kind of harmful stereotype.
Exactly.
So how do we even become more impeccable in a world where there's negativity just like everywhere?
It's all about awareness and choice. You have to start by noticing your own language patterns. Like, do you use words to build up or to tear down? Do your words actually reflect your true intentions? By becoming more conscious of our language, we can really gain control over the energy we put out into the world. And that's where the real magic starts to happen.
It's like we become responsible creators. We're shaping our own reality with every word we choose. Okay, let's move on to agreement 2. Don't take anything personally. I'm just going to say right now, this one's tough.
Yeah.
Isn't it just human nature to take things personally, especially when someone is directly criticizing us? Like, how can we detach from that emotional reaction?
Well, remember that dream we were talking about before. Like, everyone is living in their own version of it. It's shaped by their unique experiences and their perceptions. So when someone does something hurtful or says something hurtful, it's often just a projection of their own inner turmoil. It's not an actual reflection of your worth as a person. It's like they're aiming at their own reflection in that smoky mirror, but they're missing the real you entirely.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that almost excuse bad behavior? Like if someone's being rude, are we supposed to just shrug it off and say, oh, it's not about me? Like where's the line between protecting ourselves and not taking things personally?
It's not about condoning the negativity. It's about choosing how you respond to it. So instead of like internalizing someone else's negativity, you can just recognize it as their issue. It's not yours. It's like they're handing you a cup of poison and you have the choice to drink it or not. By not taking it personally, you're breaking free from their emotional drama and you're reclaiming your own power.
So agreement 2 is almost about like self-preservation.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that other people's actions often have more to do with them than with us. We're going to get into more of that in a bit, but first, let's take a quick break. All right, so we've talked about, the power of words and how not to take things personally. But isn't that so hard to do when we're like always just filling in the blanks with our own assumptions? Right. Which takes us to agreement 3, don't make assumptions. I feel like this is a trap we all just constantly fall into.
Yeah. It's so ingrained in like how we think that we almost don't even notice it anymore. We just assume that we know what other people are thinking or feeling or like what they meant by a certain look or, a comment they made. But remember, we're all operating from those different dreams, those like internal maps of reality. So assumptions are just shortcuts that our minds take, and a lot of times they lead us down the wrong path.
Okay, so how do we break this habit? I mean, asking for clarification, like every time we're unsure about something seems exhausting. Is it really about like never assuming anything, ever?
I think it's more about choosing curiosity over certainty. So like instead of assuming you know the answer, you approach things with an open mind and a willingness to just ask questions. It's like Ruiz says, assume nothing and ask questions until you are clear. And this not only prevents those misunderstandings, but it can also really deepen our connections with people.
It's like we're replacing those blurry assumptions with this like sharp focus of clear communication.
Exactly.
But even with that clear communication, there's still that pressure to perform and like get things right.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the final agreement. Always do your best. I love this one because it's not about perfection. It's just about effort.
Right. It recognizes that our best changes. Some days our best is going to be different than other days. We're not robots. We're humans with changing energy levels and moods and, our circumstances change. So it's more about showing up fully, whatever that means in the moment, rather than beating ourselves up for not meeting some impossible standard that we've set for ourselves.
Yeah. I used to think doing my best meant like pushing myself to the limit, even when I was completely exhausted or burnt out. But now I see it as like being honest with myself about, what I'm actually capable of and showing up authentically, even if it means, saying no sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's so much easier said than done.
It is.
Do you have any advice on how to navigate those moments when we just feel like we're falling short?
Well, I think it's helpful to remember that story from the book about the man who asks the Buddhist master about meditation. And the master emphasizes finding joy in the process, not just chasing the outcome. So it's about doing things for the love of it, not just for the reward or the recognition. And when we can shift our focus from the outcome to the process, it really takes the pressure off and it lets us tap into that inner wellspring of joy.
Yeah, it's like we're reclaiming the joy of simply being. Of experiencing life, fully, even in those moments that seem really mundane. So we've covered all 4 agreements. But how do these principles connect to that broader Toltec philosophy of freedom that Ruiz talks about? It's not just about personal happiness, right?
Right. The 4 agreements are tools for dismantling the dream of the planet, that collective nightmare of fear and violence and injustice. And remember that analogy of the parasite in the mind. It's those limiting beliefs and all those negative emotions that just keep us trapped in a cycle of suffering. But we actually have the power to starve that parasite and create a new dream, a dream of heaven on earth.
Okay, so that brings us to one of the most intriguing concepts in the book. It's the dream of the second intention. What does it even mean to choose a new dream? Is this like the Matrix where we can just pick our reality?
I don't think it's about like escaping reality. It's more about consciously shaping it. We've been living in the dream of the first attention, where we're just absorbing beliefs and programming from other people. But with the second attention, we actually reclaim our creative power. And then we can choose the thoughts and the beliefs and the actions that really align with our true, authentic selves. It's like we're going from being passive consumers of reality to becoming these conscious creators.
So it's about taking those old limiting beliefs, those parasites, and replacing them with more empowering ones. But how do we even do that? It's not like flipping a switch, is it?
Well, Ruiz actually offers 3 solutions. There's attacking the parasite head by head, there's starving it, and then there's the initiation of the dead. So it's this process of confronting our fears and managing our emotional reactions, and then ultimately surrendering to a new way of being. It's kind of like that phoenix rising from the ashes, shedding the old to embrace the new.
Initiation of the dead. Sounds pretty intense. What does that actually look like in practice? Is it like some big dramatic life-altering event?
It can be subtle or profound depending on the person. It's really about letting go of those attachments to the old self and the ego and the need to control everything. It's about surrendering to the flow of life and embracing uncertainty and allowing ourselves to be transformed.
It's like a death of the ego. It's like shedding all those layers of conditioning that aren't serving us anymore. And in its place, we find what? Freedom, enlightenment. What's on the other side of this death?
Well, it's about waking up to our true nature, like the essence of who we really are beyond all the masks and the roles that we play. It's about experiencing a much deeper connection to ourselves and to other people and to the universe. And it's about embodying those qualities of love and joy and freedom that Ruiz describes as like the true essence of heaven on earth.
Okay, so that brings us to the idea of actually creating heaven on earth. Now, that sounds pretty ambitious. Is this about achieving some perfect state of bliss where everything is just rainbows and butterflies?
Not really. It's not about denying the challenges of life, but it's more about shifting our perception and choosing love over fear. Remember that visualization exercise that Ruiz has us do? Like, imagine love radiating from everything around you. It's about consciously choosing to see the world through this filter of love, even when things are messy and imperfect.
So it's not about pretending that everything is perfect. It's about choosing to focus on the good, even in those really tough moments.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even those people who just seem to be radiating negativity are ultimately expressions of love at their core, even if it's buried under all those layers of pain and fear. So it's about choosing compassion over judgment and choosing understanding over blame.
I love that. It's like we're reclaiming the power to actually choose how we experience the world. But it's not just about personal happiness, right? Ruiz talks about how this shift can create this ripple effect. It can transform our relationships and even the world around us.
Right. Like our own personal transformation can actually contribute to a collective shift toward greater love and peace and understanding. It's like we're raising the vibration of the planet, one heart at a time. And this is where it gets really interesting because Ruiz even links this transformation to like the evolution of humanity, suggesting that as more people embrace these principles, we'll see a shift toward a much more conscious and compassionate society.
Now that's a vision I can get behind.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, it feels kind of overwhelming to imagine creating that kind of massive change. Like, where do we even begin?
I think it's important to remember that it's not about single-handedly saving the world. It's more about focusing on our own personal transformation. And as we become more aligned with those principles of love and integrity and authenticity, we naturally radiate that energy outward and it inspires others to do the same.
So it's like those ripples in a pond,
Yeah.
Expanding outward, touching everything in their path.
Yeah.
And as more people choose to embody these principles, those ripples become waves and they create this incredibly powerful force for change. That's a pretty inspiring vision.
Absolutely. And that vision isn't just about some far-off future. It's about making choices right now in this very moment that reflect those values of love and kindness and compassion.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today and my mind is buzzing with all these new insights. But there's still so much more to unpack, right? We're going to delve even deeper into the practical applications of the 4 agreements and explore how they can impact our health and relationships and even our spiritual journey. We'll continue this deep dive after a short break. Okay, so we really unpacked like all the philosophy behind the 4 agreements, but how do we actually put this into practice? It's one thing to talk about creating heaven on earth and choosing a new dream, but how does that play out when you're stuck in traffic or dealing with deadlines and that one coworker who always seems to push your buttons?
I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where the 4 agreements become less about these big, lofty ideals and more about those tiny little choices that we make every single moment. Remember, Ruiz was a surgeon before he became a Toltec teacher, so he saw firsthand the huge impact of stress and all those negative emotions on the body.
So this isn't just some like airy-fairy stuff. There's a real connection between our minds and our bodies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Think about it. When you're stressed out or angry or resentful, what happens to your body? Your muscles get all tense. You might get headaches. You might have digestive issues. Those are all physical manifestations of those parasites we talked about. But when we can choose love and joy and forgiveness, we create this inner environment that actually supports healing and vitality. It's like we're changing our biochemistry with our thoughts and actions.
Wow. So agreement 2, don't take anything personally. that suddenly becomes a health strategy. Like if I'm less reactive to that coworker who's always getting on my nerves, I'm not just like protecting my emotional well-being, I'm actually protecting my physical health too.
It's all connected. And it's the same with agreement 1. Be impeccable with your word. Just imagine how much your relationships would change if you chose words that built people up instead of tearing them down. Words that express appreciation instead of criticism. That's not just about being nice. It's about creating this positive energy field that benefits literally everyone.
Yeah, I'm really seeing how these agreements can have like this ripple effect. They impact not just us internally, but also how we interact with other people. It's like these small choices that we make, they create this domino effect, and it leads to healthier relationships and more fulfilling work, and even just a greater sense of peace in the world.
Exactly. And think about agreement 3, don't make assumptions. How many arguments could be avoided if we just asked questions instead of jumping to conclusions? How much hurt and misunderstanding could we prevent? Clear communication is so important for healthy relationships, and that goes for personal and professional relationships.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, when you assume you make an ass out of you and me, okay, that was a bad joke, but you get the point. And finally, agreement 4, always do your best. Does this mean we have to try to be perfect in every area of our lives?
No, not at all. It's more about aligning our actions with our values. So some days our best might mean we're tackling a big project and we're super focused. And other days our best might mean we're taking a break, recharging, or we're asking for help. It's about being honest with ourselves about our limits and giving ourselves permission to be human.
I love how this agreement encourages us to be compassionate with ourselves and to accept ourselves. It takes the pressure off of having to be superhuman, and it allows us to be more present in each moment. So the 4 agreements, they're not just about some abstract spiritual journey. They're a practical roadmap for navigating life with more awareness and grace and intention.
And I think that's what makes this book so powerful and enduring. It's not about achieving some perfect state of being. It's about embracing the journey of growth and transformation. It's about all those little choices that we make every day that over time lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
This deep dive has been so great. I feel like I have this whole new perspective on the 4 agreements and how I can use them in my own life. But as we wrap up, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
I think the most important thing is to remember that it's not about memorizing the 4 agreements. It's about putting them into practice. Experimenting, making mistakes, and seeing what works for you. The real magic happens when we integrate these principles into our daily lives and allow them to transform us from the inside out.
That's a great way to put it. And for all of you listening out there, if you're feeling inspired to learn even more, we highly recommend checking out Don Miguel Ruiz's other books and resources. He has some really great companion books and even card decks that offer daily reminders of these principles.
And remember, this is just the beginning of your journey with the 4 agreements. The real work starts now. It's when you take what you've learned here and start applying it to your own life. So true. And as you do that, be patient with yourself. This is a lifelong process of learning and growth. There will be times when you stumble. There will be times when you fall back into old patterns. But the most important thing is to keep coming back to these agreements as your guiding principles. They're not rules to restrict you. They're tools to empower you to create a life that's full of love and joy and freedom.
And as you start on this journey, we'd love to hear about your experiences. Share your insights and your challenges and your triumphs with us in the comments. We're all in this together. Let's support each other as we create a more conscious and compassionate world, one agreement at a time.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the 4 agreements. May your words be impeccable. May you take nothing personally. May you make no assumptions, and may you always do your best. Until next time, keep choosing love and keep shining your light.